just after 6 p.m. And this is the spiritual discussion program. I'm Saad in Bromley in southeast London, and I believe Gregory's there with us now. Gregory, are you there?
Hello.
Welcome, Gregory. Tell us again where you are and how is the weather where you are?
It's been bright today in Brussels.
Okay, good. It was, I will say, it has become bright in the afternoon here, but it was a bit overcast earlier in the morning. And I will say it was not, we had a sunny time I think yesterday, Monday. Yes, it was very bright yesterday. So today, and warm, but today wasn't as warm. But anyway, the spring is here. I want to welcome listeners. And I want to actually just celebrate that yes, on Saturday, which is 20th of March, just passed, it was the Vernal Equinox. And in the northern hemisphere, it marks the end of winter and the beginning of spring. And in the southern hemisphere, it marks the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. And also, in certain countries and cultures, they celebrate this event, especially the spring. And in fact, in Iran or Persia, it's a new year for them. So Happy New Year to them and anybody else who's celebrating for this spring, beginning of spring. At least that is in the northern hemisphere, as I say. In the southern hemisphere, they're celebrating autumn now. So welcome to the show, listeners, the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And we have a new topic every week. The topic for tonight is being our brother's keeper. Being our brother's keeper. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641-958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdushin is the spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. Dear listeners, I just want to remind you the topic we're discussing tonight is being our brother's keeper. Being our brother's keeper. And you're invited to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I just want to say a little bit about the topic we picked tonight, being our brother's keeper. It might sound strange for some people. I may not have heard such a phrase. It's taken from the Bible in the Adam and Eve story involving Cain and Abel, their sons. So I won't talk about that story straight away yet, but that's where these words have come from. And we are going to discuss it in deeper detail. So that's, if you're concerned, or not concerned, but wondering where these words have come from, being our brother's keeper, they originate from there. But I think if you look at the words themselves alone, it should give some sort of idea what the topic's about tonight. So Gregory, as usual, I looked in the dictionary of the title for tonight, being our brother's keeper, and I looked up the word brother, and it says there, a man or a boy with the same parents as another person, which sounds a bit strange way to say it, but basically we know in the family with the same parents you can have two brothers, and so basically the male child, you can say, from the same parents. That is considered to be a brother of his fellow siblings. Now, another definition I found, Gregory, is that a man who is a member of the same group, or who shares an interest with you, or similar way of thinking to you. So somebody with a similar interest, basically. So we can refer to them as a brother. That's also well used. And it's common, they said in this dictionary, it was saying it's commonly black men or black people use this phrase regularly to call each other brother. And obviously, by definition, when we say brother, for everybody in this world of equality, this automatically includes sister, obviously. But we are just using the word brother here. And yes, so that's, Gregory, I'm just going to repeat that. So 2 definitions of brother. One is to do with the family, where a brother is, you could say, the male sibling of the same parents. And then the other one is someone who has the same interests as you, or it belongs to the same group as you. So that's the definition. So, Gregory, would you say this word definition that I've read out from the dictionary, is that a comprehensive, or let's say relevant definition for what we are discussing tonight when we say being our brother's keeper?
These are very narrow perspectives of that expression, brother. So we want to hold on to it. Then there will be no holistic picture of what brother means.
Right. So I won't ask you to sort of give your own definition now. I think we'll just keep discussing and bring this the word brother out more as we go further. So now I want to move on to the next word in our title tonight, which is keeper. And there, Gregory, in the dictionary it says carer, carer, basically a person who takes care of animals, that we know, like a zookeeper, you could say, or is in charge of valuable objects or buildings. So I don't think that's very how can I say complete, but that's how it's defined here. So I'll just repeat that: keeper, basically, which is a carer, a person who takes care of animals or is in charge of valuable objects and building, etc. It does say etc. actually. So again, Gregory, is that a comprehensive definition?
Actually, to have a much better picture, one should not break it down. It's an expression. Being one's brother's keeper is an expression which has a holistic view. That is what one should be looking at, rather than the different verbs or nouns in the expression.
I see. So we should treat it as a one expression rather than individual words. Okay, thank you for that. So, okay, so let's look. So we don't have to break it down, it means that way. So being our brother's keeper. Again, Greg, I don't want to jump straight into the definition of what to ask you on that. So maybe I will go and read from the Bible, just the story, which is from about Cain and Abel, and it's from Genesis, chapter 4, verses 1 to 15. That's the Old Testament, and I'm going to read that, and it's titled Cain and Abel. Then Adam had intercourse with his wife, and she became pregnant. She bore a son and said, "By the Lord's help, I have acquired a son." So she named him Cain. Later, she gave birth to another son, Abel. Abel became a shepherd, and Cain was a farmer. After some time, Cain brought some of his harvest and gave it as an offering to the Lord. Then Abel brought the first lamb born to one of his sheep, killed it, and gave the best part of it as an offering. The Lord was pleased with Abel and his offering, but rejected Cain and his offering. Cain became furious, and he scowled in anger. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why that scowl on your face? If you had done the right thing, you would be smiling, but because you have done evil, sin is crouching at your door. It wants to rule you, but you must overcome it." Then Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out in the fields." When they were out in the fields, Cain turned on his brother and killed him. The Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" Sorry. When Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" he answered, "I don't know. Am I supposed to take care of my brother?" Then the Lord said, Why have you done this terrible thing? Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground like a voice calling for revenge. You are placed under a curse and can no longer farm the soil. It has soaked up your brother's blood as if it had opened its mouth to receive it when you killed him. If you try to grow crops, the soil will not produce anything. You will be a homeless wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, this punishment is too hard for me to bear. You are driving me off the land and away from your presence. I will be a homeless wanderer on the earth, and anyone who finds me will kill me. But the Lord answered, no, if anyone kills you, 7 lives will be taken in revenge. So the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who met him not to kill him. I will stop there. That's a reading from Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 to 15, about the story of Cain and Abel. And I'll just summarize it because it was quite long, where basically Cain and Abel both offered their, let's say, harvest. One was farmer, which was Cain. Cain was a farmer, and he offered his harvest, and Abel offered a lamb. That was his from his as what he was looking after the sheep. So that's what he brought as an offering to the Lord, and the Lord accepted the offering from Abel, but not from Cain. And Cain became furious. I'm just summarizing this, and in the end, and basically, you could say, out of envy, he killed his brother Abel. And there was, let's say, a big consequence out of it. So I won't go further than that. I just will stop there. Gregory, I just want to look at this story. I mean, they did the same thing. I just want to first, there's so many things in this story, actually. And I just want to examine a little bit at a time. So first of all, they both made an offering. Cain and Abel both made an offering. One was accepted and one was rejected. So just to get a clarity on that, was there something wrong in one of the offerings? That was that in this case it was Cain who offered his harvest. So was something wrong with that offering?
Specifically, there is something amiss in the reports that you have just read out.
Right.
And that which was not reported is the key to understanding whether things are accepted or rejected.
Right.
And what is missing, the motives behind the offerings.
Right.
That is what was not discussed. And every other thing lies on the motives which Abel had or Cain had. We want to follow the stories through. The motives reveal themselves along the line. So understanding the motive behind the offering from either Cain or Abel clarifies the whole thing, and basically there will be no conundrum about it.
Okay, I mean, that to me, what you just said there, it is really is the key to this, you could say, the mystery of that, what I said about the offering, because it didn't seem on the surface anything wrong, either of them. The other one has done for him not to be, his offering not to be accepted. But now you're saying there's something behind them, there's a motive, which has not been stated here, which is actually missing, like you pointed out. And but from what you have said, Gregory, the motive does become clear as you read the story further. Am I right to say that?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go there. Let's go, because I think without that understanding, we really can't examine this, properly. So, okay. I mean, the title tonight is "Being Our Brother's Keeper," and that was the question that Cain asked the Lord. That, oh, um, am I supposed to be looking after my brother Abel? And it seems from that question that, well, maybe I'll let you go there, Gregory. What do you think? What was that point that Cain was saying to the Lord, that, am I my brother's keeper? What was the point he was trying to say there?
Again, when you look at it from a holistic point, the narratives presented there turns out to be too binding in the sense that, as if on the one hand you have a personality, the story has granted a personality that is called the Lord, and then you have Abel, then you have Cain. These are only allegorical narratives to drive home a point. If it is not taken that way, then errors will arise, and it will be complete waste of one's energy in considering it and looking at gifts which have been, in quotes, offered. Like many will say, gifts are offered. Sometimes there are Greek gifts. It means you don't really want to offer it, but you do something because you want something in return, or do it grudgingly. There is something behind it, and the motives, like I said, govern all these things. As with any activity which is perceived externally, if one doesn't examine the motive, then one is only looking at one part. It is the motive that activates the laws of creation, activates the spiritual laws that have repercussions in accordance, that when one has sown, one is bound to reap. From that point of view, every other thing becomes very clear as to where Abel was heading and Cain was heading.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. We're already starting to build a picture of, as you said, the story is allegorical. So it's like you have to see the moral of the story, and, or let's say what is the point of the story, rather than worry about who are the characters and what exactly they have done. It's the motive you've pointed out. Is the motive is what we have to look at. So let's work through that and find out what's actually the two Cain and Abel are actually doing. What are their motives? How they are acting, and what are the consequences of those motives? So now, you basically from the story, Gregory, the Lord is pleased with Abel's offering, and not pleased with, has declined Cain's offering. And you have said it's to do with the motive. So I'm assuming Abel did obviously something which was obviously it was pleasing. He must have done something, like say, in the right way when he offered it, and Cain didn't. So in this story, it doesn't quite tell us that what exactly did Abel do and what exactly did Cain do. Can we work it out, Gregory, from this story, even though it's not explicitly stated here?
The inner core of man is of spirit. whatever activity man engages in, if the fruits of these activities are offered in happiness and joy, in appreciation for the opportunities granted the individuals, then those fruits are acceptable. If, on the other hand, the motive behind the offering is not in accordance with the laws, which laws have been laid down by the will of the Almighty, then such fruits are not acceptable.
Thank you, Gregory, for again highlighting the broader picture, which gives the context when we examine this story. So we talked about the laws. You brought up about the natural laws or the laws of creation, although you didn't mention the word creation, but the natural laws that, let's say, the life or our world operates in. And whatever we do has to be aligned with those laws. So if anything is going against that, then obviously there are, you could say, destructive consequences. But if it is in line with the laws, then they are, let's say, very, I would call it fruitful, the harvest. So again, I just want to look at this story. I know it's allegorical, but because it has points things out, it's sort of, you can be quite specific sometime in there. So, Gregory, when I look at when the Lord asked Cain, that is, why are you angry? And then and why are you making such a face, angry face, you can say. And it was like the Lord wanted to show him a lesson or something to learn from this experience. It seems that, but it appears that Cain couldn't reckon with that. He couldn't accept. Sorry, are you still there, Gregory?
Yes, I am.
You're still there. Okay, so let me just repeat that. So when the Lord asked Cain, why are you angry? After the Lord had rejected Cain's offering and accepted Abel's offering, and it seemed it's like Cain was thinking, because you said there's a motive. So there was a motive how Cain offered his offering, and how a motive for how Abel offered it. And obviously Abel must have offered something that was let me say genuine, because you asked for motive, so it must be a genuine motive. And Cain offered something with not a genuine motive somehow, and somehow maybe Cain thought, oh, the Lord cannot see that, so why is he why is he rejecting this? But obviously the Lord saw it, and he wanted to show or teach a lesson to Cain. So my question is, Gregory, on this, does it mean, Gregory, we must accept always the situation we are in, because sometimes, let's say, things can happen. You start with something, let's say, in your heart, let's say, and then things don't go to as you wanted. I'm not saying that exactly applies here, because they both made an offering, and maybe they initially had both a good, wanted to do it out of good will, you can say, but somehow it turned into something different. And then, so I hope I'm not confusing people, but somehow maybe, as I say, you start on the same way with a good will, and then somehow you turn into something different. So what I want to ask, Gregory, when things don't go your way, let's say with Cain, as it happened with Cain, how do you deal with that situation? Do you accept that, okay, maybe I've done something wrong, or do you still carry on this journey?
As a matter of fact, you will find that when many a person make decisions, in the first instance, there is no calm reflections whether these decisions are in accordance with him who placed the laws into creation. Means you just make it a haphazard decision, and when it doesn't go well, that means your personal expectations are not fulfilled. Then for many there's panic. That has never been the way forward. What has always happened, or what should be happening with any personality, is to reflect quietly whether the decisions being made first are in accordance with the will of the Creator, that is, are in accordance with the laws of nature, which brings benefit to all, which benefits will not allow the person who is making the decisions to tie knots in the future. That means you make a decision which will not burden you in the future. In that case, you yourself must use your free will, spiritual free will, such that your decisions will bring benefit to the whole, not only to yourself. When one is making the decision which is based only on selfish perspectives, then you will find that the laws of creation, through which you yourself came into existence, are such that one is for all and all is for one. That means you make decisions to not only benefit you spiritually, ethereally, or even earthly, but also ensure that those around the neighborhoods, those who have similar aspirations, and that is where brotherhood comes in, similar aspirations, who, like you, have come into existence in order to experience and go back home as self-conscious personalities. Surely it is not difficult to detect that. As long as man makes decisions only to satisfy himself, then the likelihood is that mistakes, knots are tied, for it becomes partial, one-sided, not refreshing, not helping those of similar aspirations, not conducive to the environment and to creation as a whole. That is what this story is likely to teach us, rather than the characters which have been placed there. One should not look at the character when they say, the Lord said this one said this, and that. That is very far from it.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abfushin. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or getting a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic of discussion we are having tonight is being our brother's keeper. Being our brother's keeper is from the Cain and Abel story in the Bible in Genesis. Being our brother's keeper. And you're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, just to say what you said in your previous answer, what I keep being reminded is that, first of all, the story that we're talking about, Cain and Abel story, it's an allegory. And of course, that means we need to understand the lesson of what is being pointed out there. And then also, it's meant to be very comprehensive in its when it gives a picture. So yes, there are characters in the story doing something, but it's much broader than that. Than those activity that it says in the story, and we have to appreciate that and understand that and acknowledge really that's what this is about. And what you've pointed out in your answer is that this is a comprehensive happening, not. So let's say people act out of self-interest. Somebody thinks, "Oh, this is what I want." Yeah, but then we know every action there's a consequence. So you don't live in your own bubble or a vacuum. You live in a world with other people. Your fellow human beings. So you do an action, which is your choice and your decision, and the consequence of that, it doesn't just affect you; it affects others around you. So you can't, I think the main thing here is you need to be aware of your decisions and actions that you take and the consequences of it. And also, Gregory, you pointed out that there's you've used the word in the past, framework. We are living in this world. You could say, yes, on this earth, we are on this earth, and yet you could say let me call it, I'm just wondering, Gregory, to continue with the story, what it says there, or to keep exploring, because, we've talked about selfishness in a way, the effect of that being selfish and what it can have. And but then there's also, so then when you've taken an action, there's a result, a consequence that comes from it. But I'm just reflecting on that. If we need to look at the consequence immediately right now. So, before I do that, Gregory, I think it's more important now what exactly is a brother's keeper? What is it meant to be that when you're your brother's keeper? Are you meant to really look at every activity of your brother, that you watch every step, or just involved with your brothers? And of course, when we use the word brother, we mean very broadly our fellow human being. That's what we mean here. So it doesn't, just to be clear, we're not talking that it does not include female or sister and people like that. We're including our fellow human being here. So how much are we supposed to, let's say, care or look after our fellow human being, Gregory?
Well, that question, the precise answer was given when Christ made the statement, love thy neighbor as thyself. And the question went forward, saying, who is my neighbor? And Christ gave the precise picture of what that expression neighbor means. So instead of using brother, one can then substitute neighbor to represent brother. Basically, one considers the category of brotherhood or neighborhood as those that have similar aspirations, which aspiration is to improve upon their personality such that they themselves, before too long, should be matured enough as self-conscious human spirits to return home. When one finds people of that type or that species, it's as if one has found those of similar characters or homogeneous thinking, in which they need to support themselves. Support in thoughts, support in deeds. That strictly is the concept of brotherhood or of neighborhood. Support in the sense as carrying out activities which will enhance not only for yourself, but for the activities of others. Not to put obstacles in their way that will drag them down. For true brotherhood or neighbor, whatever one cares to call it, only means one is striving towards the betterment of themselves, which is assumed that is what each personality intends to achieve. In order for these to be realized, one will find that in nature or in creation or in life, virtues have been placed. Which virtues man or one's neighbor, which virtues one needs to develop into to polish themselves. Virtues with good volition, virtues like modesty, like diligence, like courage, skillfulness, grace. These are the things which are tangible, which each personality needs to cultivate. These are the talents which are inborn that each person needs to cultivate. Either one cultivates them, and the fruits of this cultivation, if they are accepted in accordance with the laws of creation, then the motive must have been genuine and good. Otherwise, like the case of Cain, the motive must have been not genuine and must have been bad. For some people try to cultivate their virtues or to live their lives in such a way, but based on selfishness, grudging other people's achievement while doing so very little. So it becomes very clear that which is done voluntarily and therefore genuine, and that which is not done voluntarily but grudgingly, yet presenting fruits.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. Again, you covered quite a lot in there, and I was thinking, because you talked about neighbor, but it doesn't, and you also included there that we must be like striving for our improvement, or let's say becoming more, just developing ourselves, you could say, in as a becoming like a mature person, somebody's striving for good, you can say, having that common aim to develop. So, and these are the people who are our neighbor. That's how you put that in that context. So the help, when we talked about who being our brother's keeper, or who we should care for, is aimed for those people, not every person, just because obviously some people are striving for different things, which may not be, may not be aligned with this. Although you also said that every human being is, has this, you could say, built-in or inherent wish to become, like a mature person, or it's like a built-in thing. I'm not saying this as clearly as I'd like to. I apologize for that, but it's like we all have the same nature as human beings in terms of, or goal, let's say our goal is the same, but because of our free will, you can say we can choose one path, and we can choose another path, or in like an opposite path. It's our choice. But when we are talking here about being our brother's keeper, in this activity of being our brother's keeper, we can only help or care for people who are striving in the same path as, let's say, this path towards development, let me call it that way. So I think you pointed that out there quite well. And that's a neighbor. That is somebody who's our neighbor. So what? Yeah, go on.
May I add
yes.
something?
Yes.
What is referred to here, the concept of neighborhood, one is not considering distances. One is referring the concept of neighborhood first, our ethereal neighbor, not only our physical neighborhood, and the persons or the other beings who also have their field of activity in that area, in that neighborhood. One is also referring to also in the spiritual neighborhood. For many, it is very clear that talents have been buried, and these talents need to be cultivated like grains being cultivated in a field. The differences are in the way in which each personality has gone about the cultivation. For those who continue to strive to improve upon themselves, those people will not shut out from others because they realize, like diamond, one has to polish the other. That means one has to support the other in allowing these talents to come to fruition. You may have that within the same neighborhoods where you have so-called brotherhoods, people have different skills. There are some who are sheep herders. There are some who tend crops. There are some who are builders. There are some who are drivers. They have different skills. To have a complete society, these skills need to be brought into the picture for cooperation. For the farmer, it's not at the same time the herbalist or the doctor. Yet, the goal is to strive to improve themselves. Therefore, to have a complete supportive neighborhood, these skills, which are complementary, need to be brought in to build up. Therein lies one's brotherhood keeping, in bringing out the complementary skills for each person to contribute in supporting. Again, one is forced to look at the game which has taken over the whole world, and that of football. If you are in the same team and you have the same goals to score, to accomplish, if you are playing in a particular wing and find that your neighbor who is in the same team has a slight injury, you quickly will cover up for your neighbor because the goal is unflinching. The same thing is considered when human spirits left their home in paradise as unconscious spirit germs to incarnate on earth, work together, polish each other, support each other, so as to come to a better understanding on how to live with one another, achieve that goal, and take it back home. Only there can one say one has arrived consciously or self-consciously. So the whole picture, the holistic picture must be realized rather than the parts, fragmented parts, which seem to be contradictory.
Thank you again, Gregory, for painting the I was going to use this word global picture, well, not quite the way I want to say it, but it's just like showing the whole context of this, our activity, rather than, as you mentioned, the fragmented picture of, let's say, our own little neighborhood, which is what we can just see around us, nearest to us. There's always the big picture, and we need that big picture, let's say, to really act in a correct way, you could say. Just if you only see from your point of view, just the nearest around you, you'll ignore what is the bigger picture, and then you'll just do your own thing, rather than, like you say, in the team, when you see there's a whole team, you have to cooperate with the rest of your team, otherwise you will not achieve the goal. So it's the football is, in a way, a very good, brilliant example of this way of looking at this picture that you've painted. So, Gregor, you talked about support there. Now, and that, some people are, let's say, stronger than others, or more experienced than others. So when let's say, each one of us, we always look at each other when we are doing something, and you could say, if we finding faults, I don't want to make it in a negative sense, but I just want to say, or weaknesses, let's call it weaknesses. We see weaknesses in each other, right? Is it our duty to point out these weaknesses when we see in this, let's say, our fellow neighbor, and correct them, or should we let the person struggle a bit, and when you think, okay, this is, they can't sort it out, maybe I should intervene then?
That is a pertinent question that you find in many places. The thing here is, of course, someone else has challenges. In the first instance, there are no two people with the same states of maturity on earth. People are at different stages of maturity. But the question now that arises, that one has observed that there is some shortcoming in another in the pursuance of a specific goal. And the question now is, how should one respond to that? The challenge that each person must consider is that particular person is different, just like you yourself. If you yourself need some help, how do you think others should go about it? And at the same time, you are now reflecting how you yourself must support others. If, however, you understand the challenges of the other person, then becomes clear the motives that drive that particular personality to behave in such a way. Only there can you address it. For if one doesn't understand the motives, it becomes very difficult. For very simply, many are driven by fear of failure. If you yourself have not been driven by fear of failure in the past, then when you find someone who is in that state, you will not comprehend what lies behind their behavior. But for many who have gone past that stage, understanding the challenges of others, understanding the challenges of not wanting to lose face, then through one's personal experience, one can ask for strength and guidance on how to approach the matter. So the solution is personal, for you can only give out from your experience. That means you can only give out from what you yourself have. From what you do not have, you cannot offer that particular experience to support the other person. Therein lies the key on how to be able to support, to be your brother's keeper. For you may wish to jump in, and in doing that, even muddle the waters. For the other person, they may reject it. The best many can do is always to send others good thoughts, in smiles, in good words, which smiles and good words will shatter the walls that many have built around themselves. You yourself, having once been in that scenario, now have the experience, knowing fully well that that which is good, which will shatter what has been built around them, is what first they need. At the same time, not pointing out their shortcomings or hammering on it.
Thank you again, Gregory, for that answer. It shows how careful we have to be before we act. You know, examine, we've said it before, weigh and examine, weigh and examine. And you have to, so in every situation, you have to look at it. Oh, do I intervene? Do I say something? Or, you know, what can I help? If I can help, what can I do? So, you know, at the end of the day, you can only give what you have, what experience from what that you have. You can't give otherwise. So, so it's like, again, remembering, looking at the big picture as usual, as we've said already. Look at the big picture and see how you can contribute. So thank you for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And if you're interested in knowing about the Grail Message or getting a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we are just to say, we are broadcasting on blessradio1.com, blessradio1.com, and also on YouTube. Go to YouTube and put in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space live stream. That's for the live show. And then after the show is finished the next day, you can hear the recording of this show and our previous shows. Again, you go to youtube.com and then type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, then space Grail Message, and then space the topic of the show, which tonight is being our brother's keeper. Being our brother's keeper. And I do invite you listeners to join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on this topic, being our brother's keeper, is our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, we've been looking at, let's say, encouraging and our fellow man, our neighbor, in our activities, and looking at as the example of the football team, and so just trying, supporting if somebody falls or gets injured, you can look after them, or you take their role, something like that. You're always keeping your eyes open in that direction. Now, so we know in the world there's a lot of, let's say, suffering out there, Gregory, in the world. It's massive, as billions of people on this earth, and many are suffering, all parts of the world, let's say. So my question is, Gregory, I mean, you've talked about helping, you can only help from your experience and so on like this. But when you see in the news, let's say, Gregory, this happening, suffering happening somewhere in, let's say, let's call it place A, and then another one, something happening in place B, another happening in place C. But at the end of the day, Gregory, you can't be everywhere. You can't go everywhere. You can have sympathy and empathy with all this situation where people are suffering. So what do we do about that? We can't be everywhere, Gregory. And also, like, as you mentioned, we only have limited, we can only give what we have from what are the ability that we have. So how do we, Gregory, sort of decide that what we can get involved with, or what we can support?
There is certainly something that each personality can give. Good, firm thoughts, beseeching the light to grant those who are in such conditions the strength to overcome the challenges which they face. It is not just wishing, but the strong intuitive volition, which volition, when it becomes concentrated when others contribute to it, forms that which is very strong, and because of the contribution of the thoughts of others, will precipitate, and one person or the other who may be nearest to that neighborhood may be granted the physical means that will be made manifest for those who need it most. Such is possible, and is that which everybody has. It is not the physical money, or there are some who may have all the monies, yet they don't have the technical know-how. However, in our thoughts, asking for help and in accordance with the laws of creation, those things which are homogeneous, those homogeneous types will come together, reinforce themselves, and the nearest person in the neighborhood may suddenly find the necessary resources, be it either medical resources or financial resources, or even if just simple words which will enable the sufferer to come to better appreciation or to lessen the sufferings which the sufferers are going through. But at the same time, the sufferers themselves must, through their experiences, open up for help.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. There's one other question I want to follow from what you've said there. What about prayer and, asking for God's help? So far, it looks like only human are helping fellow human, and we haven't mentioned anything about, I don't want to use the word supernatural, but let's say help, let's say more, something, let's say bigger that can help in a stronger way, let's say. So what about prayer? And you said about thoughts, you mentioned about sending thoughts to encourage or to support the people who are suffering, let's say. But what about prayer and, asking for the Lord's help?
The question, if I understand you clearly, is it from the sufferer or from those other observers? Which one do you mean?
Okay, that's okay. I was thinking so generally. I would say both. Let's look at it from both sides. So first, the sufferer, and then also the people who are observing and feeling the, because some of us, I say, can't go directly intervening. So that's why I'm saying, can they? So let's look at it both ways. So the sufferer, us sending prayer, making a prayer, and asking for the Lord's help. Let's look at that first, and then also we look after that the people who are observing, seeing the situation, and they're also doing the prayer.
Many times, the one in the center of the picture who is suffering, many open up. The expression or the saying, when the need is greatest, the power of the Almighty is nearest to you, is always true. It means that power is so close to you. If, however, you yourself do not know how to open up, to tap into it, then that power may not reach you. It doesn't mean that power has not been there, but you have closed yourself to it, and therefore the suffering increases. If, however, one knows how to open oneself by not planning revenge, by not entertaining impure thoughts, then in the same measure of purity, the power of the Almighty will descend on those spots where one is highly tormented, and in one way or the other, that particular personality will be helped. However, there is a caveat. Many times, a sufferer wants to dictate how that power must reach him, that is already an impure channel. So in that particular scenario, though the power is nearest, is unable to find any channel through which to reach that person in need. On the other hand, you have cases where the sufferer is not in the position to do that or is unconscious. And we have an observer over a distance who prays that the power of the Lord Almighty, actually, even the power which we claim to use does not belong to us, is only lent to us through our spiritual decision. Because we are in a closer neighborhood, it is possible to also direct that power to those in need. And in that case, uniting with the power which is nearest to you, we find things are activated to be of benefit to him or her who is in need. Again, the inner state, not that of the physical body, the inner state of the soul in this particular instance is decisive. If the inner state as such rejects the power because it is not in accordance with its preconceived notions, then that power cannot be effective on the personality. If, however, the personality in need of help does not reject that power, then in most cases becomes of immense help. Much of the justice, the well-ordering of the activities in creation, much of this is what the walk in the light of truth, the Grail Message, discusses. Not only of the physical activity, but also the non-physical, where majority of the lives of men rests.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Covering quite a lot. Looking at both angles of what I mentioned about the prayer being requested, let's say, from the sufferers, and then those who are observing it, and how the effect, basically how it works. You have really given the working of that picture of how the prayer works in all, you could say, various scenarios. Now, I've got another question following from what you've said there, Gregory, because what you said there, it could, let's say, apply in certain, I'm going to use the word ideal in quotes, in a particular specific situation. And now I'm going to give you another situation, and if you can respond to that. So basically what I'm saying here now is that, let's say a few people are suffering a certain certain circumstances, and they are, you mentioned earlier at the beginning that what is important is the motive behind whatever activity you are participating in. So let's say if there are few people with a pure motive, genuine motive for whatever goal they are striving for, if they're struggling or whatever it is, and then there's a majority of people who are not, let's say, even opposing this goal, can those few who are still striving in a genuine, and you could say genuine and with a good heart, if I can put it that way, in a genuine wish to become noble human beings or develop themselves, however you want to put it, if the majority are, you could say, acting against that or preventing them, can those few actually succeed, despite this, hardship? Um, and I don't want to pick any absolutely specific example that is going on in the world, but sometimes, people's freedoms and or you see sometimes circumstances where people haven't caused a war themselves, but then they are having the effect of the war. They're helpless. They're not soldiers, but they seem to be, let's say, civilians in a weak situation, and then they're being bombarded or, looking in a very terrible, helpless situation. Sorry, Gregory, I've just realized I've confused two things here. Let me just come back a little bit. So my question is, Gregory, is this. Imagine a group of people, only few people, striving for, let's say, doing something good to develop themselves, and the majority opposing that or trying to prevent that. Can those few still succeed? Let me start with that question.
Of course, they can succeed if and only if they are patient and they also persevere.
Right. So now, thank you for that. So the other scenario which just came into my mind, and I realized I was going on a different direction, where, like I gave this example, where thousands or even maybe millions are suffering, starving, and they're in a very weak, helpless position because they're stuck in some war-torn situation, which they themselves are not fighting, but they seem to be, because the people around them who are fighting have, surrounded them with this situation, and they can't escape. Can they, Gregory, and this time the numbers are a bit different because the majority are suffering here, but they're in a very weak situation. In terms of this, I know in a physical way, I know I'm painting a physical situation, but still it's a suffering. And then they're being attacked, you could say, or being vulnerable to attack from a lower number. Can they also come out of this, from this situation?
Of course, they can arise from that situation. Like was mentioned, there is that of patience, there is that of perseverance. One should not give up. Never forget that people are at different stages of maturity. Evil persists when those of good volition remain silent. As long as one or two or several people of firm good volition, firm and good in accordance with the laws of creation, such firm good volition will receive the strength it needs to help to jolt others, to be of help. Again, that is in accordance with thy brother's keeper, for they understand that like the others. They have come here to grow and mature, to be able to return home. Therefore, the goals are the same. What has happened is how they wished, the different variations they wish to follow to get back home. As long as they remain firm and are not perturbed, then that firmness, that genuineness, that purity attracts the necessary power in accordance with homogeneity, same type. That strength will help many to overcome the challenges. No matter how dark a place could be, a match, no matter how bad it could be, a flimsy, what you refer to as flimsy light, can still shine and shine very bright in a very dark area. Kindness knows no boundary. It touches whoever is open to kindness. So one should never give up. For the necessary lessons must be learned. The lessons that many have learned in their suffering, if they allow those suffering to touch their inner core, then the lessons will be preserved. They themselves will now come to the realization that that which they have gone through is not of upbuilding, and they themselves would not or will cease to operate in such a way that will be of obstacles to their neighbors. So there are many lessons to be learned from all these things. However, you'll find that in most cases, the so-called good ones turn their faces. One must engage, not only in physical deeds, but above all, in the purity of one's thoughts.
Thank you, Gregory, for your answer there. Again, how firm we have, you're showing how much firmness we require to be, and also that you could say the multiple benefits of the striving for this nobility and goodness that, which on the surface you may not appreciate it, but then the fruit, when it comes to you, you will really, how can I say, not only appreciate, but it'll be like you won't, it's like, I don't want to compare something lowly with something so high, which is spiritual, but I will just use it like we use the example of football, that, once you've driven a Rolls Royce, you don't want to go back into a Mini. It's like when you've tasted the fruit, which is really beautiful and fulfilling, I'm going to say that way, you won't want to go to something that is not, that doesn't satisfy that high fulfillment. So thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushin. And if you are interested in getting a copy of the Grail Message or want to know more about the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is being our brother's keeper. Being our brother's keeper. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments on our UK number, which is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And just to remind you, we're broadcasting on blessradio1.com. That's the number one, blessradio1.com. And also on YouTube live. You can go to youtube.com and then type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, Bless Radio 1, then space live stream. And then after the show, the next day, you can hear the recording of this show and our previous shows. Again, go to youtube.com and then type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, and then space Grail Message, Grail Message, MESSAGE, and the topic of the show. So tonight's topic is being our brother's keeper. Now, Gregory, we've talked about this earlier on. We always use the example of football, like you say, about being in a team and working as a team. But I just want to explore this a bit more. We are individuals as human beings, and we have our own wishes and desires to fulfill what we want to do. Yes, of course, we are living in this world with others and fellow human beings, and we, as you said earlier, love thy neighbor as thyself. So we have to realize that there's others around that we also must, you could say, care. That's what we're saying tonight. Be our brother's keeper. We look after our neighbor, care for our neighbor as ourselves. So does that mean, Gregory, I know you did mention it earlier, but does it mean when you do that, when you do strive for what you want and care for your neighbor, that you are sacrificing or suppressing yourself at the same time in fulfilling? Okay, I hope you can hear me, Gregory. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there was some sort of interference. So basically, I'm saying when you have your own personal desires or wishes, what you want to achieve, and then you also care for other people as well, as loving your neighbor. Does it mean that you are suppressing at the expense of your brother? Let me say like that. Are you suppressing some of your wishes?
It depends on how one goes about the fulfillment of your personal wishes. It is the methods that counts. And in this case, there must be flexibility. Most of the time, in the fulfillment of taking good care of yourself and also being of assistance to one's neighbor, for many, rigidity comes in, considering only what you yourself have thought out should be helpful. The necessary taking care of your neighbor doesn't mean the neighbor should be shoved aside and then you take over their activities Far from it. That is not the case. For in considering it that way, you'll be burning the candle on both ends. The first duty for every individual is to take care of himself. And in doing that, ensure that one does not violate the possibilities that others also have in taking care of themselves. At least start from somewhere. Then one may go to the steps to try to comprehend the challenges that your neighbor may have based on your own personal challenges. Understanding that as you yourself are striving to overcome your challenges, so also is your neighbor. From such a perspective, the likelihoods of misunderstanding will vanish. Therefore, one does not need to burn the candles at both ends in the help of one's neighbor. Do not forget, today you are considering helping your neighbor or supporting your neighbor because your neighbor is in need. If your neighbor were not in need, you will not be in that position to be of help. You are talking of today. What happens tomorrow? You yourself might be in need. In need, not basically because of physical things like you mentioned, in need of other things which one has not even considered. So it's in the voluntary offering, the voluntary consideration of the welfare of your neighbor, albeit if only at the beginning in kind words, which will grant one's neighbor the possibility of self-improvement rather than cutting away completely. That is what is being referred to. But it does not mean at the same time taking all the duties of one's neighbor. That is not it at all. Just as today your neighbor is in need, tomorrow or the day after, you yourself can be in need. In need of what? These are the questions. Sometimes it could be in need of kind help, or just offering a hand, or just even waving. These are the needs which one cannot do without. Here in the era of the COVID, where you have your neighbor, you yourself might have contacted it, and now you are in a dire situation. Maybe only a neighbor is able to call the ambulance for you. Whereas the previous week or the previous year or the previous day, you were in a position just to have kind discussions with your neighbor. Therefore, it is flexibility, not rigidity. Above all, things must be considered from a completely or wholly spiritual point of view on how one should interact with one's neighbor. By neighbor, like we stress, it doesn't really mean the person next door to you or the person living in the same house with you or the person in the same city. By neighbor, that commonality, the goal. So there are those who are here in flesh and blood. Because you yourself are in flesh and blood, all others who have that commonality of flesh and blood are your neighbors. By neighbor, there are those who have departed, who do not have their physical body of flesh and blood. However, they have a soul, which soul is moving in the non-earthly, ethereal environment. Because you yourself also have a soul that is able to move also in this ethereal environment. They are your neighbor. By neighborhood, you yourself have the animistic body deep within, and all those who have that same implement are your neighbor. And finally, by neighbor, there is the inner core, the spirit, the goal, which is to come here in this area of the world of matter to mature. So are others striving towards that goal because they are of spirit, striving towards the goal of spiritual maturity, of self-consciousness. They are your neighbors. So one should consider these things not only in a narrow sense, but in the sense of sending out the necessary good thoughts, the spiritual thoughts, the necessary intuitive perception to be of help, asking for help from on high to be able to also share one for all and all for one. That is what neighborhood is all about.
Thank you so much for that, Gregory. I've got another question, which is, let's say, quite different from where we've been what we've been talking about so far, which is that, let's say, there's something in your life which is more personal, and you could say private as well, where, let's say, you're looking for your partner, or you start having in that journey of finding your partner, and when you, let's say, share with people around you, family and others, everybody has their own opinion. Either it's going to work or not going to work, or it's going to, just whatever the opinion they have. And also there's, if you share, well, just generally there's a danger of the gossip as well, which can, let's say, lead to, when this, say, two people are coming together, that they could destroy the potential of the couple coming together because of, let's say, gossip or other ideas that are being floated about by the people around you, that maybe you're sharing, what you're doing. So my question there, Gregory, is, I know it's not quite, there could be this thing about being your brother's keeper in terms of getting advice about, what I should do in this situation with this potential partner or something like that from the close ones around you. However, it could lead to, the person who's meant for you could find, it might even destroy that coming together. So what I'm asking now, Gregory, is how does one determine, what should, that you get let's say, the striving that you have, that what you would like to achieve, let's say, it works in a I don't want to use works in a productive. Not that doesn't what I want to say, but it's successful because it's meant to be, rather than other outsiders who are, let's say, in quotes, being your brother's keeper, but actually are almost working against it. But they don't realize that. That's what I want to say. So everybody has a good intention, because you talked about motives, Gregory. Everybody, yes, they want you to have your partner and be with someone for you, but then you have your, let's say, vision of sensing of what it should be, what the person should be, and that person also, and then there's other opinions of others who are close with you, and when you share with them, they could basically, it could lead to, like, at the end of that relationship when it's really meant for you. So the question is, Gregory, how do you determine what you can share, or what you should share, or what you shouldn't share in such a scenario?
It's a very popular and important question. The affairs of the heart, like you mentioned, should be kept first in the heart, and it should be allowed to grow. And when it has taken firm roots and firm foundation, that which has grown will exhibit itself. There is a lecture in the message which is silence. When a thought strikes you, and that thought is good, hold it. And through pressure and silence, it will grow. And when it grows, before too long, it will manifest. But whatever has occurred to you, and is an affair of the heart, where it is taken most seriously, should be protected from others. If, however, you yourself are of gossipy nature, then even before it has taken firm roots, you have destroyed it, and no one can be of help. So that which is important to you should be taken with utmost precautions, nurtured in patience and perseverance. Only then can it take roots. Else, in gossips, it will not take root, and you will not achieve that which you could achieve.
Thank you for that, Gregory. It shows, every scenario or situation must be looked at in the right way. If I don't know how the way to put it. It's like, I think you use the word important, and you could see, this is important to you, then it's not so important to others. And so you have to look at it like this, and if I say something, in quotes, like gossip, it turns out to turn into gossip, then obviously it can be over. The whole thing can be over. And as you say, the guilt, I don't want to use the word guilty, but the cause of it is only you, since you opened the door for that, even though others might have been involved. So thank you for bringing that out. Oh yes, we're coming almost to the end of the show, but I just do want to look at this, Gregory. Again, going back to the Cain Abel story, right at the end, when Cain, let's say, was shown to be, the murderer of his brother, and there was a consequence of that, where He said, whatever you, if I can just read it, I think it's a bit easier for me to just read out that part of the story. Then the Lord said, this is from Genesis chapter 4, verse 10. Then the Lord said, why have you done this terrible thing? Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground, like a voice calling for revenge. You are placed under a curse and can no longer farm the soil. It has soaked up your brother's blood as if it had opened its mouth to receive it when you killed him. If you try to grow crops, the soil will not produce anything, and you will be a homeless wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, this punishment is too hard for me to bear. You are driving me off the land and away from your presence. I will be a homeless wanderer on the earth, and anyone who finds me will kill me. I'm just going to stop there, Gregory. So what I want to ask from this question, from this part of the story is, when you have done a deed, a terrible deed, and then obviously there's going to be a consequence for that terrible deed, could this terrible the consequence be so overwhelming that you can basically, in quotes, lose your life, or let's say salvation, maybe I can put it that way, where you can never basically return, or let me say it another way, where you can never really redeem that crime?
First, one should understand that the repercussions which is mentioned there are the seeds that Cain, or the seeds that are sprouted in the non-earthly, which is basically in the ethereal realm, where Cain subsequently will have to reap that which he himself has sown, has put in place. Those seeds may precipitate and have earthly repercussions, but one must consider those particular areas. Actually, the scenario is there where a personality can commit a crime where he is never able to redeem. That scenario is that of spiritual indolence. For the human personality is granted some time into the world of matter, which world of matter comes into being through precipitation. It grows, it matures, and subsequently will undergo disintegration because it is temporal. During that period, the human spirit who has incarnated in the world of matter is permitted to mature, to grow to the maturity from consciousness of the neighborhood to consciousness of itself. Self-consciousness, that is the goal. If, due to indolence, it does not bestir itself enough to reach that state of self-consciousness, then when the world of matter undergoes disintegration, the character, the structure it has built within itself, because it's not in accordance with the laws of creation, those structures, those characters will be crushed. Will be crushed, and it will go back home to paradise as an unconscious spirit germ. Therefore, spiritual indolence is a sin. It's an offense against itself. Therefore, it is important that whilst on earth, it is high time the human spirit wakes up.
Thank you very much, Gregory. Dear listeners, I want to end the program tonight with the word beginning of the Grail Message, which is the foreword of the Grail Message called For Your Guidance. The bandage falls and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this in the form of ready-made opinions of others only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Aprushin. Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wish them a beautiful week.
Thank you. And same from me, listeners. As Gregory always, we recommend you to pick up the Grail Message and examine it for yourselves. We'll be back again next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time, as usual, with another topic. All the best, everybody. Have a great week. God bless.